we've had such great growth. I mean, since 2000 to 2024, we've had 50-fold growth nationwide in data center development. We're going to have another 50-fold in the next 5 years. So think about what we're going to double our size of data in the next 5 years, and right now it's being driven by AI.
Greetings. Welcome to NAI Global's How's Biz podcast. I'm Gary Marsh. Today's guest, we're happy to have Kevin Goeller. Kevin's a CCIM, SIOR, and a principal with NAI KLNB, and his office is based in Tysons, Virginia. Kevin, welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you. Glad to be here.
We had wanted to have you and 9 of your colleagues as podcast guests some point this year because you were one of NAI Global's top 10 producers in 2023. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was a good year, but really it's almost I think it's a continuation of what you've been enjoying for a number of years now. So you're not a one-hit wonder for folks that don't know Kevin, and we'll get into some of the reasons why that is. But before we go there, Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit more about your career path, how long you've been with KLNB, what markets your offices, I believe, in DC and Virginia cover, and your team, if you have a team.
Yeah, I've been with the NAI KLNB since 1996. Prior to that, my first 10 years in real estate was in a small town in the county seat of Loudoun County, which historically people didn't know where it was. Now everyone knows where it is around the world because it's the top location, Ashburn, Loudoun County, the top location for data in the entire world. Prior to that, I actually farmed in Loudoun County. So I started my career in agriculture and then gave up the farm and got into real estate right during the Tax Reform Act of 1986. And the rest is history.
Wow, we don't have too many of you with your background. I mean, farming, that's unusual. I mean, you don't really talk to modern farmers these days. They're there, thankfully. What were you farming?
It was it was actually fresh produce, but I put in a lake and irrigated and had computers, and this is before everyone was using computers for anything. I don't want to get too technical on the farming, but my block of tree, I put 2,700 peach trees on a farm, did an orchard, and it was all, there was technology behind it, and it was something that others hadn't done to that point. So it was a good venture. It was a great venture, but it's a way of life. Farming is a way of life. It's not a career. Real estate, I thought it was a career, but it's a way of life as well, because as you know, it's 24/7. NAI KLNB, I built a team. We have a team now of 4 members that specifically is critically going towards the discipline of data, as I have since the year 2000. I focused on a lot of technology tenants. That was what I loved. I did a lot of industrial and office leasing and sales, but I focused on the technology because that's what I really liked, and that's what I went towards. And that's where it brings us to today with all the data and the land and doing development with land for data.
Well, there's a real obvious connection between you and the land. You went from farming it to, I guess you could say, mining it or facilitating it for massive amounts of data that the world uses.
Yeah, we grow fruit and vegetables, and now we're growing information technology. What can I say?
Yeah, well, it sounds like your wonkiness is in your DNA.
Yeah.
And again, Kevin, the community that you are from, how's it pronounced?
Loudoun County?
Yeah, okay.
Loudoun County, yes. Well known. They call it, Ashburn is well known. Historically, last decade, we had 18 million square feet of industrial. And then we started converting the industrial to data. We call it brownfield development. And now we've got 30 million square feet of just data. And in addition to that, another 30 million of industrial. So the entire region has grown just dramatically.
Amazing. Well, for listeners that aren't quite familiar with the subject, when Kevin says data, the second word in that is center. So it's data centers in particular that Kevin and his team have become experts in. And we'll again dig into that subject a little more, but and you said it's the #1 location in the world for data or data centers. Is that because of its proximity to a little place called Reston, Virginia?
Yes and no. And basically its location with DC, but the infrastructure came because we have two airports, a national airport in DC, well, right in Arlington, right across the river from DC, and the other one's at Dulles. But we connected that with metal phone lines years ago, what they called it the internet. And that was federally owned land, and it connected to Dulles Airport. And off of that, we had our electric grid going right down the toll road and connected the electricity to all of the different, we call it the spook development, the ones, the buildings that didn't have names on it because they were government entities here and there, and they supported the U.S. government. So with that happening, the infrastructure was in place, and we'll get talking about infrastructure here in a minute, but the infrastructure was critical. That crossroads that you look for retail is what we call a hard corner. For office, it's symbiotic uses. And for data, it's fiber and power and water and sewer. And so that's the infrastructure that I'm talking about.
Okay, got it. And then I don't know this, but it'd be interesting to learn. You're about to share it. This center for data centers is obviously truly hardwired. Is that the case for all of them, Kevin? In other words, do they really need that hardwiring?
Well, yes, and we historically had a backbone that everyone needed to be connected to, which was in the Tysons Corner area, which is where my office is. But we have become they're so vast now with the infrastructure of the fiber across the country. It really doesn't matter where you are now, as long as you have the crossroads of the proper infrastructure. One center can go down here in Ashburn, and another one will still be carrying all the data in Denver, and vice versa. I mean, basically, we have 3 power grids in America: East Coast, West Coast, and Texas. And everybody wants to be a part of each one of those. So if you're a data provider, you have a location on the West Coast, you have one in the East Coast, and you have one in Texas. And then everything else is an infill, whether it's concentric rings around that, or there's another reason to be north or another reason to be in the Midwest. They're filling in now, and that's what you're seeing across the country.
Got it. Tell us about your team. What are your team members' names? What do they do? One of the reasons we ask is there's a lot of teams within the NAI global platform. They've emerged as a more popular way, and there's reasons for efficiency and whatnot. We still have some highly successful lone wolves, as we used to call them, but you've got a team. So
and we still, there are still a lot of lone wolves. Teaming has seemed to be, for us, it's been a proven success. The team members of myself, my son is in the business. He's got 2 decades of experience with a public-private partnership and with the government, and he's on the team. Ryan Goeller, Chase Stewart, who was a newbie 8 years ago, and now she's fully engaged on all the projects that we're doing, plus the typical leasing and sales and development land. And we have our newest member, Jeff Terra, who we just brought on board this January. So he's brand new, and he's learning the ropes now. He historically has been a office broker in the Tysons Corner, Fairfax County area, and now he's spreading out with us. I would tell you, with teams, it's really critical that you build a plan around your discipline and live by it. And you will see that 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2, it equals 3. Or in this case, 2 + 2 doesn't equal 4, it should equal 6 or 7 or 8. And that's the critical movement of a team, and that's how it works the best.
And then you mentioned the disciplines, and by that, I presume, Kevin, you mean particular skills or whatnot.
You mean a discipline that they use the word discipline? No, I mean, are we going after pad sites for retailer? Are we going after development ground? Are we going after data center ground? What are we doing? What is our actual function as a team? And if something comes up tomorrow, that involves another discipline, say a development, say our discipline is a certain territory, which in my case and my team, it really is. It's the Loudoun County, Western Fairfax County market. That's our discipline. If something comes out on the eastern side, does our team handle it? No, they refer it to somebody else. That's what I mean by focus. Focused on the discipline and focus with the team, because that's not what we do. We do it this way. We do it here. And if you keep the focus, everything else falls right into place. You're not distracted. You don't chase the money just because there's a deal coming in and it's worth a lot as a broker. You stay focused on your relationships and you keep trudging forward.
All right, good. It sounds good to me. Well, and it sounds like we shouldn't put you in a limited box. As big as data centers is as boxes go, it sounds like you're doing land. So you guys are land brokers foremost. I think I'm hearing that.
Yes, exactly. And with a little critical spin on the information technology. Because remember when this all started, 1999, 2000, there were NOC, SOCs, and data centers. So Network Operating Center, we call it a NOC, SOC, SOC, Security Operations Center, and then data centers. So all three of it didn't matter, it was information technology. What are we going to do, and where do we locate, and how do we do it? And you've heard a lot about all the other pieces of the data center. The edge centers, the IoT, the Internet of Things, and the data itself, whether it's hyperscaler, all the different forms of data in itself, and that each one of them has a different requirement.
Understood. And just again for the audience, you mentioned a word we're going to clarify later. Hyperscaler, my understanding means
hyperscaler is a large data center user that may have inside its company different companies, mini companies and functions. For example, Amazon. It's more of a wholesaler, if you will, of data. Okay, Amazon, Google. Then there's co-location providers where they have different tenants that they lease space to. They basically are a provider, but they lease out different blocks, more of the retail environment of data centers. And then there's the enterprise, which is a very specific driven use for that user, Intel, Microsoft, that kind.
So kind of like a single tenanted building, if you will.
Yes.
Got it. Back to the team. And again, as a top producer, you already mentioned one of the secrets to your success, and that is the team stays within its disciplines, plural. But maybe, especially since some of our audience are the younger brokers that are just getting going in our industry, what are some of the other secrets to success, Kevin? Your work habits, things to avoid, what gets your attention and interest, that sort of thing.
I would tell you that anyone that knows me knows that I'm big on planning, and one of the things to avoid is falling off on your plan. So if it's not working, I think you need to reevaluate your plan. Whatever's good for your team. If it's every year, every 2 years, every 3 years, but build the plan. If you find that something's not working, then you tweak the plan and you live by it. Because in this business, relationships is everything. It's not about the money that you're bringing in. It's about the relationship that you build. The money will come as you build the relationship. By way of example, my biggest transactions have all been relationships of 8 years or more with a group or an entity or an individual, someone that I built a business on. I mean, I could write plans on or I should say cases on specific clients that I've had that I built a relationship with over a decade or so ago, and it came to fruition now, or 5 years ago, et cetera. And that's really critical.
Yeah, it's the long game. If you don't play it, you don't win it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's a perfect segue. Since we are largely an audience of deal makers, maybe give us an example of one of if not biggest or bigger deals you and your team closed last year, an interesting one or a challenging one that you overcame some issues and, finally.
I'll give you an example of one that we just closed this year because it's fresh in my mind versus one that we closed last year. I would say like 6 years ago, a relationship that I built a decade ago, we were given an assignment by a client to find data center land. So we're out looking for data center land, and we engaged a group that we had talked to years ago. A lot of people have shied away from the property because it was true brownfield. Now, in this case, I mean industrial brownfield, which means contaminated. It was contaminated 20 years ago. Everyone stayed away from it, yet it was always on everyone's radar, and they were looking at it. We developed a relationship, continued that relationship with the seller, and ended up putting together a deal where one of the big data center groups ended up buying a chunk of it. It was like 400 acres, and they bought a piece of it, 1/3 of it. We ended up buying the other 2/3 of it because after investigating it, and I would say pre-due diligence, we found that not only, yes, it was contaminated, but it wasn't contaminated to the point where the exaggeration was in the market, that it was super contaminated. Yes, they've been cleaning it up for 10 years, and they probably had another 8 years to go. Okay, so this was 6 years ago. So you can see the timing here. We bought we represented the client who ended up acquiring the property, and we're finishing the cleanup right now, and we just transacted the parcel. And it was a very large transaction.
What market, if you mind if I ask?
This market, I would
Okay.
call, yeah, it would be it was in Prince William County. So it was the next county over from Loudoun, but it's still in what we call the Northern Virginia data center market.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're going to transition into your favorite subject, which is all about data or data centers. Before we go deep into it, again, the audience is somewhat knowledgeable of your field, but not exactly, certainly not to your level. But the power thing, the megawatts, is how these centers are measured by their output, correct?
Yes, I'm still a land broker, industrial broker, so we still look at things by square foot and we look at things by acreage. But yes, the actual metric is by megawatts.
Okay.
Or wattage that you lease. A 10,000 square foot bay would be one thing, but it'd be 1 megawatt of data use stuck with servers.
And then for educational reasons for the audience, again, is there any correlation, Kevin, between, say, acreage and the amount of megawatts that acreage could produce?
Anything I tell you is going to be wrong, because what it was 10 years ago is different than it was 5 years ago, and that's different than it was today, and it's considerably different than what we're going to look at tomorrow. So there really is
moving pretty quick, is what you're saying.
It's moving, yes, it's changing rapidly. And the comment that I made to you, what was it, 2 weeks ago, was that there's not 50 megawatts of power available in America today. There are so many different things going on, from the politics to the regulations to the usage to just power generation, that is basically stifling the power in America. And it's very difficult to find 50 megawatts that's ready to go right now today.
And for listeners, again, what sparked this podcast was, number one, Kevin, it was a top producer last year, but again, his expertise in data and data centers. There was an email thread with the industrial group of NAI Global, and data centers came up, and Kevin got introduced to the group, and he wrote in an email, quote, America is out of power. And that's quite a big statement. So he just qualified it a bit. So that's a big issue. I mean, we've got the emergence of all these electric vehicle cars and the greening of America and business, and et cetera. Especially, I live in California, so it's extreme,
But that state is using. We have a lot of data centers in California. They're using a lot of power, and they're stopping, the power generation all over the country. And some of the other, right now we're using coal, gas, oil, diesel, hydropower, and geothermal across the country. You add in a little wind and a little solar. What impact does that have to it? Without getting into percentages, trust me, it's minimal, absolutely minimal. We have the future of power coming, which is the Bloom box, which uses natural gas, but it doesn't burn it. So it's not exhausting that, it exhausts water, but it's a new invention. But right now it can't be scaled to massive sizes. Graphene batteries, and that's a new technology, but it's a Chinese product. And then SMRs, which are the small nuclear devices. So those reactors are the future, and the problem there is they cost $1 billion. So right now we have the whole country going through a concerted effort to figure all this out, figure out how to get more generation into our transmission lines, our substations, and get it out to the public that needs it.
I'm a little surprised the media doesn't pay more attention to this subject. It seems beyond important. It seems critical.
Think about this. When you're driving down the road and you look up and you see those big wires and you follow them, you see a substation. A lot of people don't know what a substation really is. But when you see one, you say, oh, well, that's a substation. So when Ashburn started growing up, we had 100 megawatt substations on every corner. And I mean, literally every corner. You could be over on a 1,000-acre tract, you would have 700 megawatt substations. Now, in a 300-acre tract, we have 2 300 megawatt substations. So we've like tripled the size of the substation itself, and then tripled the amount of those substations. And if you were in a neighborhood nearby, you drive by, you see all these wires and substations. You're thinking crisis, and then you see data centers going up all over you. Forget about the no traffic, forget about the huge tax increases, that you would be facing because the data centers are generating so much income for the communities. It's really, and then it gets down to, look, I'm an industrial broker, so I love these big concrete buildings. A lot of people do not love these big concrete buildings. So we've gotten into a lot of the design criteria now, where we have changed the facades, stepping back, stepping up and down, stepping forward, and different product types on all of the facades, so they look nice. We did. I represented NAI Global with the bankruptcy court of New York on the data center that was an above net data center in Reston. Looked like a giant office building. That's how well the controls were. It was blue glass everywhere. There's no way you'd even know it was a data center. This was in 2001. Beautiful product. And I think we're going to go back to that kind of product here in the future.
So it's trending that way. Got it.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned, since we're on the subject, I've heard mixed reaction from communities about data centers as a land use because they don't generate a lot of employment. But you just said, I think you said, they generate pretty good revenue for communities. So maybe tell us, Kevin, what the vibe is from different communities. And it's a big country, right? And I know you work all over the U.S. And that vibe or the political climate, et cetera, is going to vary from location to location. But in general, what do the economic development departments say? Do they want your product? Do they shun it? Do they eschew it? And then related, Microsoft expanding its data center in southeastern Wisconsin around Racine, and they've talked about some job trainings and whatnot. So really, how many jobs do these places employ, and are they, for what limited jobs they are they generally good paying?
Well, we did a talk, I think a couple of years ago, one of the conventions of NAI. We talked about the future of data that was coming, and some of those areas was robotics and e-commerce, and robotics in e-commerce, which actually produced a lot of jobs as well. It wasn't just data, but it was e-commerce in the super high warehouses and super flat floors. We talked about streaming data, which during the COVID-19, that really came to fruition. These are other uses that are going to impact the continued growth in data centers, so that you could now prove it out that it wasn't an industry that was going to collapse and everybody was going to be wondering what's going to go on for the next 10 years because the industry is collapsing. So you got the robotics and e-commerce, which helped, the streaming data, the Zoom, the Netflix, Amazon Prime, the 5G, which is going to be big on all the highways with running the trucks and the cars, et cetera. Edge centers, which will bring data to the communities rather than the communities reaching out through latency and digital delivery of the fiber to the data centers, because edge brings it right there. So there'll be less of that. And then AI, which was just one of the 5 growth areas. The AI part of it is what just blew up last year to the point where it's taking over the whole data demand. And we've had such great growth. I mean, since 2000 to 2024, we've had 50-fold growth nationwide in data center development. We're going to have another 50-fold in the next 5 years. So think about what we're going to double our size of data in the next 5 years, and right now it's being driven by AI. So why am I making a big issue out of that? Because that gets down to exactly what you were talking about. The datas are growing at the same time that the employment's going to be growing. A lot of jobs are going to be lost, and a lot of jobs are going to be gained in AI. If someone has any inkling towards technology and what's the best job that I can get, and I'm 19 and I'm getting out of school, and what am I going to do? I mean, AI is definitely the direction. Without getting into the good, bad, and the ugly about AI, I mean, AI is being utilized and has been utilized for a while already, unbeknownst to us, but it has been, and it's going to continue in every facet of our life.
No doubt, the tea leaves have been declared. On the note of what you said earlier about different places with power and where in America, and then the other thing is a lot of the industrial calls, the brokers talk about their location as being superior for 2 big things for manufacturing, and this kind of leads into touching on nearshoring and reshoring kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Water and power, that's a big draw. Where in America are there weak spots for power, and where are we really as strong as we are, even if we are running out, as you say?
The weak spots is in the regulation and the craziness of stopping everything now and going in another direction, feeding another direction like the solar and the windmills and everything, and stopping oil and gas and coal right now. It's really funny. I was in Alaska a couple years ago, and I got this great photograph of one of the export docking areas in Alaska of the ships coming in and loading the coal that we're not allowed to use in America, but we sell it to China and we ship it to China so that they can use it and pollute the entire environment. We need to get all that pollution taken care of. And I'm not saying pollute, I'm saying let's get unified in what we're doing and what we're saying. And let's do it right before we come up with these new technologies. The data guys are really bright. I mean, the actual operators of the data centers, they'll figure it out. We have seen these changes annually of data centers that use tons of water, and now we have moved more towards the other side where we're using more air than water. There are advances that are taking place quarterly in the data community of how to make the buildings better, how to make it more responsive to the politics and the critical operations of the actual center, and making it produce more with less. That's happening every quarter.
Well, that's great news. And just for clarification, you allude to water and air. These are cooling mechanisms because of the generation.
Yes, sorry.
Well, since again you work your core market and your team, certainly the territories you referenced, but when you go nationally, you get requests, elsewhere. How do you work with the NAI global offices and the platform in general? And if someone needs help, are they reaching out to you, or they must know about you by now, right? When I say,
I've been doing this as you know, for decades, and so every year we have our convention, and we would basically have a town hall. And some years it was super well attended. Other years no one would show up. It's just the way it is and the way the industry was, because everyone has to ask themselves, if I'm from Bloomington, Illinois, and there's no data demand in my area. I'm a broker. What am I going to do? How can I turn this into money? So I would tell them what I was doing, and that's, other brokers need to know what's going on right now. I would say, and I've said it all along, every annual meeting that we have, to figure out, what we're doing in our market and what you can look for in your market that may start things going. Now that everyone's focused on AI and edge centers and the Internet of Things, there's more demand coming out, and it is nationwide. It's not just in certain areas like Palo Alto and Ashburn, Virginia, and Dallas, Texas. So it is way more spread. One of the and I get calls weekly from the entire NAI company across the board. I have such and such and such and such. Can I do a data center there? And I would drill down on the address and look at it briefly so that I could guide them as to the good, the bad of whether that location would work or what to do in this case. And like I said, it gets down to like talking to a retail broker. Is it a hard corner? No, we're not interested. Is the infrastructure there? Let's talk about the infrastructure that is there and how we can actually help you get this in the data environment. Or is it a decade off? Or is it 5 years off? Realistically speaking, brokers don't like to hear that things are a few years off. They're thinking about tomorrow.
Yeah, of course. Address, if you will, cycles. I think in the email you shared with the Industrial Council, you alluded to post-internet, how the demand for data centers dropped. When I say internet, it was made commercial in 95, and .com was obviously 2000. It's surprising because with the emergence of all that technology, the .com boom, you would think that was your first wave of data center demands, but it wasn't.
That was a ramp up of data center demand, and then it just crashed because the actual companies were out leasing. They were leasing floor by floor without even a demand. It was just they had money thrown at them, and they just grew so rapidly they couldn't keep up with what was happening in the marketplace, and they had to give all the space back. If you remember, Equinox went from $200 to $2 in their stock price. Now look at them. I mean, what they do is incredible worldwide. So everything's cyclical, as you know, and as I talked about. I think it's an 8-year cycle. So, and in that 8-year cycle, we have 4-year mini cycles. So we'll ramp up for 4 years, we'll stay steady for 4 years, then we'll back off and be flat for 4 years, and then we'll ramp up again for another 4 years. And I'm looking at the 8-year cycles, and this is just the world according to me, from what I've seen. So we ramp up for 8 years, and then we're flat for 4, and then we ramp up another 8 years. The COVID hit right in the flat part of it. And as soon as that happened, the demand just was overwhelming. And it's like it skipped that flat 4-year period. The demand was just crazy because of the streaming demand and everything that was going on with COVID. Everyone was working from home. And it was overwhelming. And we're still working through some of that now. And all of a sudden, as we're finishing working through it, where you would just think that it would slow down just a little bit, and maybe we'd get back to that flat 4 years, all of a sudden AI is well recognized and utilized on so many different facets that everybody's chasing it, and we just skipped over that 4 years.
So I was going to ask, where are we in that 8-year cycle? And it sounds like it's in, for the time being, it's in perpetual up mode.
Yeah, 6 years ago, I said we were in the 4th inning of a 9-inning game, and I kept saying 4th inning, 4th inning, 4th inning. We are maybe in the 5th inning now, which is just incredible.
That is incredible. Well, I knew that I just thought binge watching Yellowstone during the pandemic was what everyone was doing, but it was driving demand for your business. So
yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Well, it's great to hear because, I mean, there's a lot of glum news in the real estate cycle right now, especially associated with the office market. So it's great to hear of a product, a commercial real estate product that's in huge demand. I did want to ask you if there's anything, before we wrap up, if there's anything that sort of keeps you up at night regarding the industry or where we're going with data centers in general.
Power keeps me up at night, and AI, to be honest, because cyber intrusions has, having older parents myself, and dealing with that. And we've all had a hit, some intrusion, sometime in the last 5 years. I'm sure you have. I certainly have. It's extremely disruptive. And the power that AI has behind it right now is not just a human sitting there being a bad actor and intruding on your bank account or my bank account or whatever they're intruding on. Now you have basically mechanical, smart computers working 24/7, working at super speeds, and what millions of people could do in 5 minutes. It's incredible, and I think that's what keeps me up at night. And I don't know what the answer is, but we've got to get control of it.
Well, Kevin Goeller with NAI KLNB, it's been a pleasure speaking with you again. A fascinating subject. We can go forever on it, I think, but in the sake of time, we'll have to wrap up. So again, Kevin, thanks so much for your time and expertise.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to How's Biz, presented by NAI Global. Review, share, subscribe, and keep an eye out for the next episode.